Hello once again, everybody, and thank you for joining me here on this Tuesday, December 8th edition of ATS Radio. I'm your host, Adam Burke. I'll be joined today by Brian Blessing, the host of Sportsbook Radio and Vegas Hockey Hotline. We're going to chat about Week 14 in the NFL. Golf is done for 2020. Nothing to really talk about that. Not really much to talk about with regards to the NHL right now either. So our main focus here, pretty much our sole focus, will be on the NFL on today's show. That is not our sole focus over at ATS.io. We're covering college basketball, college football, the NFL, top sportsbook promotions out there in the business. In fact, we got a sportsbook promotion for tonight you can read up over at ATS.io. A Lamar Jackson prop in the Cowboys-Ravens Tuesday night football game. Read about that over at ATS.io. And also, of course, Thursday again over at BetMGM Sportsbook. Bet $1, win $100 in free bets if any touchdown is scored in that game. You can read about that over at ATS.io. And while you're there, take a look at the page for the ATS app, which you can download from the Google Play Store, from the Apple Store, or if you go to that page on your mobile device, you can go straight to direct links to download the ATS app. Did a lot of work in that app yesterday, a lot of work going on in that app here throughout the week to optimize that with full article integration, full website integration from ATS.io. So you can have it right there in that app at your fingertips, in the palm of your hand, to get all of our great content from ATS. Got some great content coming up here on today's show with Brian Blessing, the host of Sportsbook Radio and Vegas Hockey Hotline. And Brian, how's it going today, man?
It's going well, my friend, but I got to not take issue with you, but in a friendly manner, disagree. Golf, man, this is the big boy. This is the season-long race to Dubai. It's their big final tournament. $8 million. Patrick Reed's the 8-1 favorite. It's a great event. It's a great course, and I would just say this: even when he wasn't playing well, Martin Kaymer in Dubai is always really good. Kaymer's had a really good season. Martin Kaymer at 40-1 looks pretty salty to me, kid.
All right. Yeah, no PGA Tour. I guess I did misspeak there. There is still golf here in 2020 over in Dubai, and
well, this is their home run, right? I mean,
we can start the show talking about that because I think both of us would rather be in some warm weather over in Dubai. Now, you mentioned Patrick Reed, the favorite there, and that one Martin Kaymer on your short list as well. Again, with this being a championship event over there in Dubai, this is one that's got a very strong field. So, are there any other players that are kind of on your radar here?
I know he's not been great this year, but I mean, you're never, I know he's played well in the desert. I mean, you could look at a Henrik Stenson at 50-1, because he hits a 3-wood as far as these guys hit driver. If he has a good day off the tee or a good 4 days off the tee, could be moderately interesting. And then a kid we're going to learn about, this Rasmus Højgaard kid, I believe is his name. He's a teenager. Has a couple of wins on the tour over there. He's like 70-1. Oh, actually, I didn't even realize that. I mean, Fleetwood and Sung Jae Im are playing. These guys, Patrick Reed's been very loyal to the European Tour. He loves it, and he goes over there, but he racks up enough wins early in the year that he's always eligible to play in this thing. So he'll be good. But some of the PGA Tour guys, and Matt Wallace was playing good on the PGA Tour, is 25-1. But I'd take a little look at Kaymer, and possibly a Stenson, but it's a great tournament. It's a great course and a great tournament and a lot on the line.
Yeah, for sure. Victor Hovland, who won last week's event down in Mexico, he's going over to Dubai. He's 12-1 out there at BetMGM. Ian Poulter, 40-1, another name that obviously everybody knows. Pretty good handicap here, pretty good field, as you mentioned. So my apologies for overlooking that tournament. Apparently there is the QBE shootout on the PGA Tour this week. Looks like kind of a pairs event. Answer and Wolf are playing together. Oosthuizen and Watson. Cameron Champ and Tony Finau. Harris English and Matt Kuchar. I don't know what this event's all about, but I guess I got to do some research on it. Maybe write up a quick article on it.
Yeah, no, it's funny. Shut her down, and then the clock starts ticking. Other than the Masters, one of my favorite events every year. I think because you're starved for golf, but there's just something about Kapalua and that Tournament of Champions. I love that course when the wind starts howling, and you've been dying to see golf. So That'll be here before you know it. It's amazing how, the FedEx Cup has been such a success that the fall tournaments actually attract better fields now because the points really do add up and give you a shot to get to East Lake next year. So golf has really exploded to the point where very little downtime. It used to be like 2 months of the made-for-TV garbage, but it seems like these are tournaments that matter, and we're only really shut down for 3 weeks.
Didn't we talk last year here on the show about pulling some strings and doing live shows from Kapalua? I feel like we had that discussion.
We did. Well, we did, and you failed miserably. You were supposed to set that up.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Oh, it's on you.
I got to tap into the expense account.
You're the important guy here, not me.
No.
You were supposed to set that up.
You got all the connections. I don't have a big network. You know everybody.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's the problem. They know me.
Yeah, I guess that's true. Knowing what I know now about how 2020 went, I would have tried a lot harder to go to Kapalua.
Yeah, how about that? Yeah, and then hopefully go there and get stuck there.
Yeah. Oh, you can work from Hawaii now. You have to volunteer, but they will pay for your round trip travel if you want to work from Hawaii on Waikiki. But you have to volunteer when you get there, which is a small price to pay, I guess, if you're able to work from home. I don't know if it's island cleanup or something like that, but there's a lot of things I would do outside in sunny and 80 right now, as opposed to seeing gray skies and snow on the ground all the time.
Can we negotiate?
Maybe. I don't know.
Right.
That's up to you. Again, now it's your turn. Now you got to figure it out.
Oh, yeah, okay. We'll shoot for next year.
Yeah, right. All right, so let's chat some NFL here on today's show, and I'll cut a highlight video. I keep forgetting to do this, but as long as everything goes fine with the audio or the video stream here, I will cut a highlight video talking about some Week 14 games. But before we get to that, Brian, for our day of listeners, any thoughts on tonight's Cowboys-Ravens game from you with Baltimore? Pretty much a 9-point favorite market-wide and the total 45.5.
Yeah, the side's a little sketchy for me. Dallas basically with the Giants and Redskins pulling off those wins, their lot in life is pretty much settled in now. But there's still a lot of skill on that offensive side of the ball. I kind of like the over, I guess, a little bit. Seeing 45 is the low. The consensus, 45.5? I still think the Dallas defense is more than suspect. And you still have Elliott and Cooper and CeeDee Lamb, and they've got weapons. But the funny thing is, when you watch this game, if I'd have said to you before the season, you'd have never had me on again. If I'd have said to you before the season, Baltimore could miss the playoffs. I mean, believe me, if they somehow spit the bit in this game, they got a problem. I mean, they've got a winnable slate of games on the back end, but certainly now Cleveland has the ability to take them out the way they're playing. And without doubt, I know we've talked about it on the podcast previously, but I think we see it week after week. I just think, the AFC is so much better than the NFC. And you look at the depth of the contenders to make the playoffs in the AFC, you better not have another banana peel the way the Ravens are going.
Yeah, I mean, the Ravens have to win tonight. And then, of course, next Monday, massive game in Cleveland, probably the biggest Browns game of my lifetime, born in 86. So huge game for the Browns next week, because now all of a sudden the division's back in play with Buffalo, going to close a favorite against Pittsburgh here on Sunday Night Football. So now all of a sudden the division back in play for Cleveland. And, that would be crazy to say the least. But, hey, I guess we'll kind of wait and see what happens with Baltimore tonight. And then, of course, what that line looks like against Cleveland next week after they get through tonight's game. And, Brian, we'll have a highlight video over on our ATS YouTube page taking a look at that Baltimore and Cleveland matchup once we know what Baltimore's done tonight and if they get through tonight's game healthy. A lot of interesting storylines for this game, not to spend too much time on it. But, Dallas, the Thanksgiving game, not really a big surprise, the performance that they had after the tragic incident with Marcus Paul. Then, of course, trying to rebound from that play without really being able to process all the emotions, especially for the players that were there. And then Baltimore coming off COVID, Lamar Jackson coming back. What does the game plan look like for him? The weird, set up for Baltimore. Maybe this affected Pittsburgh. I don't know. Playing Wednesday to Monday, maybe it affects Baltimore playing Wednesday to Tuesday because it's just so out of the ordinary. I agree with you. The over is probably something I would look at here, but from a side standpoint, I don't have the slightest idea what I would like here.
Yeah, I don't trust either team. You don't know what you're going to get from 1 minute to the next. I mean, Baltimore could win by 30. Dallas could win by 10. The way, can you make the case for every game? No, I don't think so. I don't trust either one of these teams. So that's why, in generally speaking, like yesterday, I played the totals more often than not, 70% of the time. And I had the under in the Steelers game and the over in the Bills game. And it's a me thing, but it works. I mean, it's whatever works for you. And football's a funny shaped object and backdoor covers and goofball things. But to me, the pace of the game, that means you're right over the course of 60 minutes and not necessarily one bad bounce. To me, totals are like the safer play. That's just always kind of been my approach to it. And not trusting either team. The one thing I do think can happen is that I'm going to see points from both of these offenses. And Dallas's defense, like I said, is better, but they can still have those moments where they're shredded. And it's so funny to watch now. Lamar Jackson, teams are forcing him to be a quarterback. It's like, you go from MVP to all of a sudden they figured you out. And he's an incredible athlete and he's going to make incredible plays. But if he's making, 2 incredible plays now a game instead of 9, there's the rub. And if you keep him in the pocket and force him to beat you from the pocket by rushing fewer guys, in that one instance, that's the right game plan against that team. And teams are doing it, and it's working.
Yeah, and of course, I'll be very interested to see what Cleveland's adjustments are after losing that opener 38-7 or 38-6, I think it was, to Baltimore. But again, the Browns with a first-year head coach in Kevin Stefanski, no preseason to work with. That wasn't really that big of a surprise.
That game didn't happen.
Right, yeah.
All right, go just punch up the Baltimore Ravens on any site and then go and look at their schedule. Just keep clicking back and forth, season after season after season. They win all their preseason games. There were no preseason games this year. And Baltimore absolutely rolls teams in the opener. What was it, 2 years ago? The Bills ended up having, I think at the end of the day, the third best defense in the league at season's end. And they lost the opener there. I don't even remember what it was, like 45-7 or something. No, that's Baltimore's MO in the opener. That game never even happened. I would even, if I'm Stefanski, I'm not even pulling that tape out. I'm not letting the guy see one play of that game.
No, I agree. And I think for bettors, it's important to think that way as well for that Monday night game coming up here in week 14. But with that, we'll try to record this and see how it goes here and post this over on our YouTube page, taking a look at week 14. I'm ATS Radio host Adam Burke, joined by Brian Blessing, the host of Sportsbook Radio and Vegas Hockey Hotline. And Brian, let's go ahead and start with this Thursday night game between New England and the Rams. You have posted a solo video, or you've recorded a solo video for us over on our ATS YouTube page for this one. Rams -6, total 44.5. New England stays on the West Coast on UCLA's campus because they just played the Chargers in this same SoFi Stadium venue this past weekend. What do you think about this Thursday night game? How does this one go for the Patriots?
Well, I like the Rams, and give Belichick credit. He's figured out a way to compete in get back in the race. They're at 500. So they're in the hunt. So they're still motivated. But Adam, how many weeks? We've been talking about this on this podcast. It's one of the real moneymakers we've had this year. And that's just sit back and watch the New England game and come in and jump in the pool at halftime. If they're ahead, you play them because they're ahead. Obviously, the plan they've got is frustrating the opposing offense more often than not. And they run the ball either with Newton or a bevy of running backs, and they can control the pace of the game. But if they're behind, Newton can't bring them back. I mean, they destroyed the Chargers. And what did he even have 100 yards passing in that game?
No.
So you're going against the Rams with Donald and Ramsey. that defense can be a mittful. And the rub would be there are days when Goff gets sketchy. And what is Belichick taking away here? It's like, the Rams do spread it around pretty good. Maybe points are at a premium in the game. But I don't see the Patriots generating hardly any offense at all against the Rams. I really don't.
No, I don't either. I think it's Rams or nothing here in this one. And obviously, it's an interesting spot with New England, staying out west. Obviously you got the pandemic. You've got very strict restrictions in California. So all they're going to be focused on is football. So they should be very well prepared for this game. But to me, I think when you look back at what New England did to the Chargers this past weekend, that was a referendum on Anthony Lynn. That was a spot where I don't think the Chargers were going to show up for that guy. He basically told him prior to the game, we don't really have anything to play for. We're not going to the playoffs or anything like that. We didn't see a max effort from the Chargers. We saw very little effort from the Chargers in that game. The Rams,
his game management and all the things, so many of the things and he's a terrific coordinator. I like Anthony Lynn, but I mean, his game management's a disaster. And I think you bring up a great point. That was like, I always make the analogy that the Chiefs, it's like they're fooling around a kitten with a toy, pawing around with it, and just hanging around. And you never, even though the game can be close, you never feel like it's in doubt. But that was Belichick against the rookie quarterback, and they just frustrated the heck out of the kid. For Herbert's sake, you got to really start saying, what's the answer here? We got to get a guy in here that can help the development of Herbert. And I think Lynn's days are numbered. Boy, you think about they're competitive and gave games away with just stupid stuff.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I mean, this is a team that the Chargers compete week in and week out. They're in close games. Whether they win them or not is kind of up in the air. They just weren't competitive last week.
Yeah.
And that says more about the Chargers than it does about New England to me. I think this line should be higher. I think this line should be 7, maybe even 7.5. I understand that there was some opposition to the Rams for their game against the Cardinals this past weekend. I was on the Rams. It was one of the 5 winners I had in the Circa. I think the Rams are coming into form. I think that this is a very solid defense. They grade very well, whether it's traditional metrics or advanced metrics, and they've figured it out with Jared Goff. Sean McVay has made adjustments. Everybody in the league copied Sean McVay for the last 2.5 years. This year, McVay's doing things a little bit differently. They're running the football very effectively. They've taken some of that pressure off of Goff. And the one thing that we know about Jared Goff, if you can pressure him, that's when you have success against him. New England does not generate a whole lot of pressure. I think Goff has time to sit back there in the rocking chair. They can run the football effectively. I don't think I can submit my Circa card on Thursday because of all the COVID stuff and all of that, because you have to have all 5 plays. But I do like the Rams -6 this week. It'll probably be a personal play in pocket.
Yeah, and then it's funny as we're talking about, I do believe the AFC is way better than the NFC. So, and it's funny how things go in segments of a season. Go back 6, 7 weeks. We're standing there saying the NFC West, man, is that the best division in football? Well, Seattle stubbed their toe. Arizona's driven off a cliff. San Francisco, the injuries finally caught up with them, and it looked like they were making a big push here, and then Buffalo put it to them pretty good. And, the Rams team runs a little hot and cold. So we thought that division was great. Now the division as a whole has been stubbing their toe. Honestly, as we're talking it out, bud, I'm kind of thinking the under sounds good. I don't see the Patriots doing much of anything. And I can see Belichick dialing something up to force Goff into some mistakes here and there. I mean, they're getting the running game going a little bit with Akers and Henderson. But, if you're betting on Belichick, I think you're betting on this game being low scoring. And it may not be enough for him to cover the spread, but if they have any chance, it's a defensive game. So maybe the under is the safer play, to be honest with you.
Well, the interesting thing about this game is going to be, New England doesn't have a great run defense, but we talk about Belichick trying to take something away. He may flood the box. He may tell his corners, you know what, you're in single coverage and figure it out. And he'll force Jared Goff to beat him. And I think the Rams do have enough personnel in that passing game to make that happen. So an interesting cat and mouse game, to be sure. 2 very respected head coaches. And I just think that the Rams are just vastly superior to New England here, especially with the way that this game kind of sets up from a matchup standpoint. How about we go to Sunday here, and let's talk about the first game on the board, Green Bay and Detroit. Green Bay, 7.5-point road favorite at Ford Field, total 55 for this one, Brian. And Detroit, look, you can say what you want about Chicago and the dumpster fire that they are, but Detroit found a way to get it done, looked more invested, looked more engaged without Matt Patricia. Are they going to, be a dangerous team, a thorn in the side of the Packers here this weekend?
Well, I mean, the question was going into the Lions game, do they get a bounce from the new head coach? And it seemed like the players did not like Patricia, and all of a sudden they showed up and the offense got going. I've not seen yet. We'll start finding out today whether Galladay comes back here for the stretch run. Not that they have anything to play for. Do they shut him down? But Stafford had a big game, and clearly maybe it's a team playing with house money here. And for Green Bay, they just been cruising right along. Maybe this is a dangerous spot for Green Bay. And based on what we saw last week, I mean, you would have to think a track meet's in order, hence 55 and a half. And that may be low.
Well, and I look at this game and I sort of look up and down the card just in general. And I know that we have some games that are a little bit higher total than you would want to play with teasers, but a lot of people are going to tease Green Bay down to 1.5. A lot of people are going to tease Tennessee down to 1.5. Maybe Chicago, you tease up to 7.5 or 8 with that low scoring expectation at Soldier Field. You got some games where you could tease like Kansas City down to 1.5, Tampa Bay to almost a pick 'em. New Orleans down to almost a pick 'em, stuff like that. I don't know if this will be a very popular week for straight bets, but teasers are going to be all over the place, and the books are going to be rooting for somebody to break those up. And I don't know if Detroit winds up being one of those somebodies, but I think Packers tease down to 1.5 will be one of the most popular plays of the week.
And like you said, there's always one of them that goes awry. And the question is, you have to determine, was that a one-game thing? And, by the way, they were playing the Bears who couldn't get out of their own way. Or is this Detroit team? Because don't forget the players, last year they had Kansas City and San Fran beat. They started fast and they fell apart. And then it's almost like there was a mini revolt there, and they weren't playing for Patricia also. Maybe they are a completely different team. One game isn't enough for you to, with conviction, pull the trigger one way or the other, but it bears watching. And look what Atlanta's been ever since Raheem Morris jumped in there. So, the change of coach midstream, you got to pay attention to it.
Well, and I think something that's important to note here is I don't think players tank. I think coaches tank. I think coaches just either aren't prepared. I mean, say what you will about Greg Williams and the cover zero and the all-out blitz against Derek Carr at the end of that game. But, the players are out there. They're playing for contracts. They're playing for playing time. They're playing for money. The players don't tank unless they have something they want to say. The Chargers had something they wanted to say, and that was, we don't want Anthony Lynn to be our head coach anymore. I don't think Detroit necessarily tanked, but it was pretty evident from a lot of the comments that they had been making and some of the efforts that we have seen. They didn't like Matt Patricia. They wanted him gone. Detroit may not be a good team, and they're probably not a good team. But with that being said, now that Patricia's gone, they have no reason not to play, because now they are playing for money. They are playing for, playing time with whoever the new head coach is, whatever the new regime looks like, stuff like that. So I think it's a very important distinction to make at this time of the year where you're going to have team. Let's take Jacksonville, for example. Does Doug Marrone keep that job? Probably not. But Jacksonville's played hard every week. They don't get blown out often. They play a lot of close games. It would be Jacksonville or nothing for me here in this Tennessee spot, even though Tennessee is clearly the better team, because I've seen no indication from the Jaguars that they want Doug Marrone gone. So it's very important to, sort of make those distinctions and draw those lines at this time of the year, because coaches on the hot seat are getting headlines. They are getting the mainstream media buzz, but it doesn't necessarily mean the players are going to buy in to, wanting that guy gone or buy into some sort of narrative.
Well, it's funny you mentioned Tennessee, because you and I told this story on my radio show out here yesterday. You and I had a conversation at halftime. I said, well, talk about being, if you're going to be wrong, go down in flames. And we were talking at halftime. and Tennessee was down 38-7. I said, I give them one series. If they don't go down and score, I'm pulling Derrick Henry. And you said, well, they should pull Tannehill. I go, yeah, just live to fight another day. It's not your day. Well, I mean, I learned a lot about Tennessee that day because they did not quit. I mean, they just kept coming and coming and coming. And I learned more about Tennessee in that defeat than I did had they, beat the Browns by 14. And when you get to the playoffs, this is the team to me is a matchup nightmare because they can run the football. And I think Vrabel, they play for Vrabel, man. I mean, he either one of two things. He either ripped the paint off the walls in the locker room at halftime, and I bet he didn't do that. I bet he didn't even go talk to him. I bet he didn't say one word because they knew. And those players responded and didn't quit. I mean, they were being embarrassed. Turn the page. Everybody will forget about it in 3 weeks. But the way they kept coming in that game, that speaks volumes to me. And then the other thing I would say to watch for, and I had a debate with somebody on Twitter. I was a Bills fan. Saying, all that matters is Miami. They're talking for the Bills. And then somebody replied, well, no, but they're seeding, in an easier path. And I'm like, easier path? I mean, seriously, what's the difference between playing Tennessee, Indianapolis, or Baltimore in the first round? I mean, you're in the AFC, you're going to play somebody really good. And there's only one bye. So to me, give Kansas City the bye. And then beyond that, good luck to you. You're gonna run a gauntlet no matter what you do, to the point where I believe once you win the division, like for the Bills specifically, but I would rest guys. I'm starting in week 16. I honestly, God, I mean, listen. You get your home game, you win a division. I'm resting guys in week 16 and 17. Maybe they play a half or things like that. It doesn't matter to me because there are no fans. A bye is a big deal or playing at home is a big deal. Playing at home is not a big deal this year. There are not enough fans there to impact the way you approach the game. And personally, and you saw it last night, this is me, I think the Bills play better football on the road. I think they're one of those teams that they're really focused. The business trip and bonding and the whole 9 yards, they play with a level of intensity on the road that I think they're lacking in, where they have so many speed bumps and just get lackadaisical at home. I want them to go on the road. But watch for week 16 and 17, Adam. I mean this. Once teams are locked in, what's most important? Be healthy for the run. And because I'm not worried about having to go on the road. There are no fans.
I mean, frankly, from Buffalo's standpoint, I'd rather play on the road just because you don't know what you're going to get in January in Western New York. And, the defense has personnel and they are getting healthier, as you and I talked about before we started recording here. But it's about Josh Allen. I mean, that running game has gotten better of late, but it's about Josh Allen. And you want Josh Allen throwing in good weather because that gives you the absolute best chance to win. And it's why, even despite the line movement, the heavy action on San Francisco in last night's game, I liked Buffalo because Josh Allen was going to a controlled environment where, he was going to be able to put up numbers, and he absolutely did. And, yeah, I mean, I think if I'm Buffalo, I'd much rather go on the road, although they're probably going to win that division and not really have that luxury, at least for their first game. But, I totally agree with you.
The biggest angle that was out there that nobody took into consideration was the white face mask angle.
All right.
When all right. They made a big deal about it on social media. They looked faster. Didn't they look faster? No.
You know what?
They only did it once before. There's only one other time. They made a big deal of it, and I wonder if they'll do it the rest of the way because of their primetime games. But last year, they've always just worn the standard gray face mask. They did it last year. They were 1-0 coming in. They did it on Thanksgiving Day last year and murdered the Cowboys.
Well, so
I use the white face mask angle.
You've talked about this before, and you talked about this on last week's show, and I know we talked about it, I think, when I did your Sports Grid show on Tuesday as well. Buffalo doesn't get primetime games. Buffalo has always been overshadowed, unless they're playing New England and they happen to get a primetime game out of that. They've always been overshadowed. And now they're getting them. And they've got another one here this week. And I think about that angle with the Browns on Monday night as well, where the Browns have an opportunity in front of a nationally televised audience to show how far they've come. Baltimore plays in this spotlight all the time. It's nothing special to them. It's nothing new to them.
That's right.
But for teams like Buffalo and Cleveland, I don't know if they're going to win. I don't know if Buffalo wins outright. I don't know if they cover. I don't know if Cleveland wins. I know one thing is for damn sure. We are going to get 110% efforts out of both of those teams here in week 14. And sometimes that's half the battle in the NFL, is knowing that a team's going to show up for you. I know Buffalo is going to show up. Now, I also know Pittsburgh's going to show up after losing their perfect record, losing that game to Washington. But I know Buffalo's going to be there. And to me, that makes the difference sometimes between a lean and a pick or something like that.
Well, I played the over last night because I was really leery of the Bills looking ahead to the Steelers. And because even though they were on Monday Night Football, they got the Steelers coming in, and I know they had that game circled. Steelers are coming in unbeaten. We're going to be the ones to take them out. I was convinced before last night's game the Bills were going to beat the Steelers, and I was really worried about last night. But the thing with Buffalo, they are dangerous now, Adam. They are getting healthy. Matt Milano was back in the lineup last night. He was all over the football field again. Edmonds had been hurt. And the amazing thing, I'm telling you, you watch Edmonds, their middle linebacker. This is remarkable. He's been their leading tackler for 3 years. He's 22 years old, Adam. When they drafted him, he was 19. You think of the upside of what that kid can become once the game slows down for him. I mean, and they dumped all this on him, the play caller, as a 19-year-old. And he's been hurt. Milano's been hurt. Trey White was nicked up. And the Bills' defense has been running hot and cold. Now the new linemen they got are doing a better job against the run. They had the goal line stand last night. This defense is starting to make plays and create turnovers again. They're starting to get back to what they were. And the Bills' offense has just exploded onto the scene. They are a very dangerous football team.
They are. And Pittsburgh has been losing guys left and right on defense. They lose Dupree. Last night, Spillane gets hurt. They've kind of had some transition with their defense, and their offense is very pedestrian. It is a very average offense. James Conner, of course, didn't play last night, but even with Claypool and Smith-Schuster, the passing game is still grading out as pretty average. So now you got a Buffalo defense getting healthy, getting better, a Pittsburgh defense getting worse, a Buffalo offense that's been very good. And of course, we'll see what the weather forecast looks like for this one. But at least Josh Allen is mobile enough to get away from that pass rush. I think it's got to be Buffalo on Sunday Night Football. It has to be.
Well, and the one thing is, this is going to sound crazy. It's an analogy. And I'm not, talent-wise, it's no contest. But when you watch Kansas City, Hill and Kelsey are uncoverable. And if you do devote everything to cover them, then you got Sammy Watkins or Hardman, running around like a reindeer in the secondary. They're nowhere near as electric as Kansas City. But Buffalo has the same thing. You got the mobile quarterback with the cannon arm, but they now have 5 wide receivers that are open. Kansas City always has someone open. And Buffalo now has a group of guys where someone is always open. Beasley is uncoverable. He's Edelman. He's today's version of Edelman. And Buffalo leads the league, I believe, in third down conversion success. And that's because Beasley is uncoverable. If you're putting a nickel guy on him or a linebacker, he's always open, move the chains. And then Diggs they're devoting so much attention to Diggs. And now the Davis kid is good. Isaiah McKenzie, who scored a touchdown last night, touches the ball 3 times a game at him. It's either a touchdown or a big play to move the sticks. And John Brown's out. When John Brown comes back, he's not Tyreek Hill, but he's their version of Tyreek Hill who can stretch the field. And now Allen knows how to go through his progressions. They're similar. Kansas City has the more electric guys, but Buffalo has the same concept that Kansas City's running, and Allen has the arm to get at the guys in windows if a guy is open.
Yeah, and the reason why I stayed off Buffalo in the circuit, which would have been a winning pick as well, is that John Brown was out, and their offense has been dramatically better with John Brown in the lineup here so far this year. I think a couple more games on IR for him, but he should be back for that playoff push as well. Speaking of Kansas City, let's talk about that Kansas City Miami game real quickly here. 7.5, the predominant number, although you're paying some extra juice on Miami if you take the hook. Total on that one, 49.5. What do you think about Kansas City laying a road number heading to South Florida?
The only concern here is Kansas City lets teams hang around.
It's almost like they challenge themselves for fun.
It's like they're clowning around, but you never feel like the game's in doubt. I mean, go back. It's funny. If you go back, the Bills played them. The final score was 26-17. Was that a Tuesday game? That was one of those weird, and it was an afternoon game. And Kansas City pushed Buffalo around. The final was 26-17. But at the end of the game, Kansas City, even though they were in complete control of the game, it came down to a 3rd and 15 with 4 minutes to go in the game. And the Bills were down 6. And Jerry Hughes, blitzed, what are you doing? Contain. And Mahomes ran for the first down, and they tacked on a field goal, and the game was over. But Buffalo had a chance to get the ball back and go down and win the game. Denver had a chance to go down and win the game. The Raiders have been kind of their kryptonite a little bit. But they just have so many weapons, but they're not blowing anybody out. But I think this is the week they do, because as good as Miami's defense is, they've not seen anything like this. And honest to God, I mean, you can't knock what they're doing. I mean, they're winning football games, but I just watch this Miami thing and go, how sustainable is this? The Tua thing is all dink and dunk and manage the game, and we'll see what he becomes. I'm not piling on the guy. He's a rookie coming off of a Grizzly injury. But I think Fitzpatrick, in a game like this, I think Fitzpatrick gives you a better shot, because they're going to have to produce, you would think. If Miami's winning this game, right, if you were having a target saying, we got to score 27, 28 points to have a chance to win this game, a chance. And that's with Miami's defense playing great and creating some turnovers. I don't know Miami can do it.
No, and I mean, look, I had a perfect week in the circa, but I got lucky in a couple of situations. The Colts getting that turnover inside the 5, and then Miami, who had a million chances to put up points in that game against Cincinnati. Their red zone play calling was simply atrocious. Tua's decision-making in the red zone was bad. They were just fortunate to play a Cincinnati team that's so awful that they were able to cover that 11.5-point number.
If Burrow's playing in that game, since he wins by 10.
Yeah, and the thing of it is here, look, maybe Miami does move the ball. Maybe Tua puts them into scoring situations. If they walk away with 3 instead of 7, they sure as hell ain't covering this game. And that's what would be the worry for me with Miami in this spot, because Kansas City's getting 7, and if Miami's getting 3, and that happens over the course of the game, it's a 28-12, 28-17 type of game. And Kansas City, like you said, they don't blow a lot of people out. It feels like they can if they want to. I don't know if they want to here, but they may just accidentally do it just because of the red zone success.
Well, and I think you got to do, when you're playing a team like this too, you got to be willing to go outside the box a little bit. I mean, like Denver, you're sitting there going, what was it? 5-6 minutes to go in a game. It's 4th and 3 around midfield. I'm going for that.
Yeah.
I mean, I know it's worked for 50 some minutes and we've hung around. We've given ourselves a chance. But at that point, 4th and 3, you got to say, well, we'll trust the defense stops them if they get a field goal. But you got to take a chance. I mean, you got to go on the premise. I ain't getting it back. And KC moved the ball, took all the time off the clock and got the field goal. If they'd have gone for the 4th and 3 at midfield, maybe they get the first down, maybe they get the points and actually win the game. Or because they were at midfield, instead of punting it down to the 10, KC would have got off the field a lot sooner and they'd had more time to go down the field and maybe would have had a timeout or two at the end. I don't know. You got to think outside the box when you're a team like Denver playing a team like Kansas City.
Not to mention, you're not playing for anything as Denver. Go for it. Yeah,
I know.
Yeah, I don't know. Look, if your decision is to try to get 3 yards or give it back to Patrick Mahomes, you're trying to get 3 yards. You and I can just rant about coaches on every show, though.
What was the one game? It was a famous game eons ago, but it was Brady versus Manning. And Belichick went for it on 4th and whatever from his own 20. And they thought he was crazy, and they got it. And went down. I think they ended up winning a game. And Belichick said, I'd rather take my chances with Brady to get me a first down on 4th and 4 than give the ball back to Manning because we can't stop him. I mean, that's reading the situation in game.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it's something that you definitely have to do. One more game to ask you about here, Brian, and then we'll wrap things up for today. Minnesota and Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay 6.5-point favorite, 51.5 the total here. Now, I'm on record on this show multiple times over as saying that the bye week has actually been a detriment for a lot of teams. You can't practice. You can't do anything. You can't leave town, go on vacation because you're trying not to get COVID. Carolina, of course, coming off the bye, they've got some COVID cases. It's happened a lot with a lot of teams here so far this season. Nothing like that with Tampa Bay. Maybe the bye is a good thing for Tampa Bay because they've had a lot of issues going on. Is it a good enough thing for you to trust them laying 6.5 here against a competitive Minnesota squad?
The problem is with Minnesota, you've got Cook who can he can light you up himself. And then Cousins can do good things, but Cousins can implode. I'm inclined to agree with you. At this late date for a team like Tampa Bay, I don't know so much about this week, but I think this bye coming now is a godsend for them. It's a little longer in the tooth with Brady and Gronkowski. And I would envision Brady's work ethic and the way he is. And like you said, there's really nowhere you could go or do anything. I bet you they actually did a lot of healthy work in this bye week to get better. I wouldn't think this was, putting your feet back and, just hanging out at home and, hey, you're off for 4 days. I bet you there was a lot of film study and, Brady maybe even doing more work with Antonio Brown to get him involved or things of that nature. I don't know how it applies to this week's game, but I think this bye will benefit Tampa Bay in the stretch run. And then the question to me becomes, I know you asked me about this game. I don't have a real opinion on it. How dangerous is Tampa Bay? Is that experience something that can make noise when the playoffs get here? Because it's been a roller coaster ride for them. It's either, but man, they look great or they look horrible. I mean, they murdered the Packers, and everybody has a great day. Everybody has a bad day. And that was the Packers' bad day. I'm curious. I don't know. What do you think? How dangerous is Tampa Bay here down the road?
I think it's a hard question to answer just because I don't know what Brady has in the tank. But what I can tell you about this game is I actually like Tampa Bay. And I've been pretty adamant going against Tampa Bay, thinking that they're overrated over the last few weeks. 2 reasons I like Tampa Bay. The first is, again, I think the bye week is an advantage here for them as an older team where they got it. And I think back to when the NHL started incorporating bye weeks and teams would come off the bye and they would just get smoked. I mean, we were printing money with that trend of teams coming off the bye against a team that was playing. It was easy money, the easiest money I've ever seen in this business. But the teams that had later bye weeks started to adjust and they were like, you know what? We're seeing this. We got to figure some things out so this doesn't happen to us. I think for Tampa Bay, when you look at how teams had struggled off the bye, like weeks 7 through 11, 7 through 12, I think teams that have had the late buys have kind of adjusted. Buffalo had a late buy. They played well. There's some other teams that kind of fit into that mold. I think teams are just realizing, what they have to do to navigate the bye week and be okay. So I think that benefits Tampa Bay here. The second thing is that prior to last week's game, Alexander Mattison was ruled out for Minnesota. And it was one of those things where one of the beat writers, and this is one of the reasons why I took Jacksonville at the last minute, one of the beat writers said, Dalvin Cook's been playing beaten up. Dalvin Cook's been playing hurt. He's been taking a lot of bumps and bruises. Dalvin Cook had 32 carries last week in that game against Jacksonville. They needed him, and they needed every one of them. So I think Dalvin Cook is very banged up going into this game against Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay can get pressure, can make Cousins uncomfortable. I think this is actually a play-on spot for the Buccaneers, and I usually don't like laying big chalk like this, and not this year off the bye, but I think this is one where Tampa Bay is set up really nicely, actually.
You know, as we wrap it up, right? But I would say, I wonder if the NFC East, being such a dog's breakfast, actually didn't have impact around the entire conference, where a team say, the division's gone, but we're fine. We're going to get in. The NFC East is so bad. And you sit here and you look right now, Minnesota and Arizona at 6-6 are, well, Minnesota's the 7th seed, Arizona's the 8th seed, and Arizona's in free fall. But a team like the Bucs, and I know they're all fighting for the division in the West. I just wonder if that NFC East thing, because so many more spots are open because a whole division was out, if that impacted other teams with sustained intensity week in, week out. We'll get them next week.
Yeah, I think it's definitely a possibility. And again, it's a tough card. A lot of teaser options here on this week's card for week 14. But this highlight video here talking about a lot of things for week 14 over on our ATS YouTube page. Subscribe over there and make sure you subscribe to the full editions of ATS Radio, which you can find on Spreaker, Stitcher, Spotify, iTunes, iHeartRadio, Google Podcasts, SoundCloud, wherever you stream and download your podcast content. With that, Brian, anything else you want to mention here on today's show before we sign off for the day?
Well, I'm hopeful that we're going to get some news today, tomorrow, the next day, and get something definitive from the NHL on what their season's going to be. I think mid-January, January 13th, probably 52 games. It seems like they finally said enough. We're at this financial impasse with all the jockeying back and forth between the owners and the Players Association. I think they're going to put that behind them because the clock's ticking. They got to get done before the Olympics. I'm looking for an announcement from the NHL here in the next 48 hours because they got to do this. They got to make a decision. We're starting. Here's the master plan. And there aren't going to be fans. There are a number of owners that don't even want to play because they're going to lose so much money. But fingers crossed that they come to a plan and we're going to do this. And I think the thing that will be fun if they pull this off and say, let's go. One of the coolest things you get during the regular season, you get the Calgary-Edmonton Battle of Alberta and some rivalry games. But there are going to be so many home and home games where they play Friday and then they're going to play Sunday. We'll see you in the next game, and the bad blood builds up. But usually the teams hop on a plane and go to the other building. So there's travel and it's the grind of the season. This is going to be a short season where you can't have a long losing streak. You can play yourself right out of it. But you're going to have so many back-to-back games where San Jose's in Vegas on a Friday, stays and plays on Sunday. The Boston's in New York to play the Rangers twice. You're going to get all these back-to-back games where the guys go back to a hotel room or they go home, come back and play. And the short season, the intensity in those back-to-back games could be a real treat.
And I think, too, in a scenario like that, ripe for great betting opportunities. Massive overreactions to the first game of a back-to-back, a home and home, something like that.
A lot of backup goalies.
Yeah, a lot of backup goalies, and that's the question, too, is, you're playing 52 games, let's say. How many games can you give your backup? And if you don't have a quality backup, how many of these starters are just going to have to play all these condensed games and all that? Should be lots of betting opportunities if they're able to get this thing going.
Backups will play more than you think. I mean, they're going to be.
They'll have to.
They're going to be playing almost on average. They're going to be playing 4 games a week.
Yeah.
And then there are going to be some nights where they're playing 4 games in 6 days. I mean, backup percentage-wise, even though they're playing less games, the percentage of games would be higher for the backups, I believe.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a lot of fun. Hopefully they can pull it off. And again, we'll be able to talk about a lot of good betting opportunities for the NHL if the season gets going here with Brian Blessing, the host of Sportsbook Radio and Vegas Hockey Hotline. And Brian, tell us about those 2 shows, man.
Oh, yeah, no, we're excited. And you're going to be on with us today. We actually do an extra hour now on the Sports Grid Radio Network. That's from 11 to 12 Pacific on their site. And then they pick up Sportsbook Radio at noon. That's on KSHP. KSHP.com. There's a listen live function there. But the Sports Grid Radio Network thing's pretty cool. We're going to be on Sirius 204 starting on January 7th. We think that's going to be great fun. And if you're a hockey fan, I think you'll like Vegas Hockey Island. We have great guests. Tomorrow, Doc Emmerich's going to join us. So we're pretty excited about that. And no, if you're a hockey fan, you'll love the hockey show. I mean, it's fun hockey talk. Good stuff.
Doc Emmerich's a great grab. Doc Emmerich, of course, announcing his retirement, last month or something like that. The sport will very much miss his voice, but it's a great grab. I'm sure he'll have plenty of great stories for you on Vegas Hockey Hotline. Make sure you watch or listen to, I should say, Sportsbook Radio as well, and follow Brian on Twitter at Brian Blessing. Brian, appreciate your time as always, sir.
Hey,
Thank you so much for joining me, and I'll talk to you later today, and you'll talk to our listeners again next week.
I just noticed you got the whale on.
I do. Yeah,
well done. See, I didn't even notice him when you went to hockey out of nowhere.
Yeah, that's all right. It's all good.
Although
we'll talk about it later on your show.
The Browns had clashes with the whale, though.
I know, but I gotta support.
It's not a great color scheme.
This is the best Browns team of my lifetime. I can finally wear it with pride.
Yeah, you know what's going to happen, right? I've waited 25 years for a quarterback in Buffalo. I got one. And of the five, and we're gonna have this healthy debate. You got Mayfield. You're happy. Of the ones that are out there, I got the one I like out of that crop. But we were both so starved for success. You watch the Bills and the Browns play in the first round, and one of our parties ends right out of the gate. Almost guarantee it.
Let me ask you this: now that you can't hang up on me, although you can cancel on me for the appearance later on. So when the Bills and Browns play, do the Bills lose on a field goal that goes wide left or wide right?
No, I think it would be the Nick Chubb, Ernest Biner fumble at the 3, and the Bills win.
Okay.
And honestly, you're too young. But it was the precipice of the Bills going to the 4 Super Bowls. The Bills should have beat the Browns in the playoffs, and Ronnie Harmon dropped the pass. It's called the drop in Buffalo, and they were called the bickering Bills. And after the drop, the Bills went to 4 straight Super Bowls. Dumbass Ronnie Harmon doesn't drop the pass. They go to 5 straight Super Bowls. Probably lose all 5, but they go.
Yeah, well, our 2 very tortured fan bases will probably on a crash course here in the
NFL. Just remember the wide right thing. Everybody's got a wide right.
Yeah.
Everybody's got a wide right.
The Browns also have a red right 88, so there's a lot going on here.
Well, the worst was Biner's fumble, right?
They're all bad. The team left for 5 years. That's the worst.
Oh, I forgot about that.
95 to 99. That's the worst. But I'm sure we'll be able to commiserate a lot more here on this.
I just hope that, I swear, I mean this in sincerity. I hope they don't play in the first round.
Me too. Because we'll have to have a side bet on it and everything else. And all right, Brian.
My cohort Stevie Slapshot. I got the side bet was wonderful yesterday. Hit the Stephon Diggs prop. Thought I was nuts.
Oh, there you go. All right, buddy. Appreciate your time, man. Thank you so much. We'll talk to you again next week.
Always fun, Adam. Have a good day, bud.
There you go. Once again, there's Brian Blessing, the host of Sportsbook Radio and Vegas Hockey Hotline, at Brian Blessing on Twitter. Coming up on Wednesday, we'll chat with professional bettor and handicapper Kyle Hunter from huntersportspicks.com. Trying to split it 30-30 with college football and college basketball. Thursday, Brad Powers to talk more football. And then Friday, Circa Picks for Week 14. That'll do it for me. Thank you so much for listening, everybody, and I will talk to you again tomorrow.